Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, hi, my name is Anushka. I also go by Eternal Honesty on this channel. If you are new, please go ahead and subscribe to the channel so you do not miss the next time that I do post. And without a long intro, let's go ahead and get straight into this video. This video is going to be for my nursing students. Whether you are about to start nursing school, you're already in nursing school, this video is for you. So I just finished up my first semester, about to start my second semester, and I finished my first semester with a 3.94 GPA. I got all A's except for one A-, and that A- was in my research class, so we're not really going to focus on that. For the classes where I was taking exams and tests and like really the nursing school classes, I got all A's. So I'm just gonna share with you guys the tips and tricks that I use in order to get A's. So I do have my iPad here with me. So if I'm looking down, I'm looking at the notes I wrote so I don't leave out any key points. The first thing I'm going to say is I prayed a lot to God. Before I started nursing school, I prayed over like passing all my classes, getting A's, doing well on my assignments, whether it is homeworks, projects, whatever. I really did pray and ask God to be with me throughout the semester with every single exam and assignment I was doing. I prayed, and even before my exam, I think I prayed before every single one except for like maybe one or two towards the end, and it was because I was so stressed out I forgot to pray, and I remember not doing so well on that exam. If you are religious, I do recommend that you pray and ask God to be with you and for guidance on your exams. But if you aren't, you can skip over that. The next tip I would say is I studied ahead before I actually started nursing school. And yes, that might seem like that's very extra, that's very like a lot, but it is something I did actually do. I did start watching YouTube videos about pharmacology and pathophysiology. I did look at the drug names and the suffixes that help you know which type of drug it is. So like I knew if it ended with olol, it's going to be a beta blocker, right? So things like that I did study ahead before I started the semester. That's the only class I really would say I kind of studied ahead for, was pathophys and pharmacology, and more so the pharmacology aspect, and it did come in handy, so I can recommend you do that. Another thing I would say is brush up on your anatomy and physiology, because that comes into play a lot, especially with patho and fundamental. So those are the two classes I would say you kind of do want to understand A&P really well before starting. So you need to relearn some things, just quickly brush up on it. 100% watching just YouTube videos and just having a general idea, you will be really set to start the semester. Next, I would say one thing I did, I went to every single lecture. I did not miss a lecture throughout the semester. I know some people feel like, oh, I can just rewatch the recordings, but I think being in lecture is really beneficial. You're able to ask questions if you are confused. I am a student who will ask questions if I do have any. So I liked going to lecture, taking my notes. I also would record the lectures myself on my iPad using Notability, so you can do that as well. I personally never really went back and re-listened to the entire lecture, but with Notability you're able to go back and listen to certain parts if you can click on what you wrote while you were recording. So that was very beneficial and helpful for me, because sometimes I'll write a note but I don't really remember why I wrote it or what was being said, so I can go back and listen to that particular point in the lecture and go maybe a little bit before and a little after to really understand what my professor was saying and why I wrote that note for myself. So I would 100% recommend recording for yourself. It really will benefit you in the long run. Looking at the lecture notes before the lecture itself, if you're able to. I know some professors, they don't like releasing lecture slides prior to the lecture, but if you're able to look at it in advance, go over it. Even if it's just skimming through, you have an idea of what the lecture is going to be about. And if certain topics are really confusing when you're skimming and it's not very intuitive, you know when you get to that slide during the actual lecture, you need to really be cluing in to what your professor is saying, how they're explaining the concept, and that's going to be really good for you. And as someone who does space out during lecture, that really did come in handy. This wasn't something I did the whole semester because after a certain point, I didn't really have time where I was able to look ahead. But as much as I was able to, I did try to read my lecture slides or review them prior to the actual class. Something I did before my exam was reviewing my lecture slides at least 2 to 3 times. The first time I'm typically looking at my lecture slides is really to understand the information. The second time is focusing more on those things that were confusing that I didn't really get the first time. The third time is me like making sure I understand everything and able to explain it in my own words to myself. So I like doing 2 to 3 times to make sure I really understand all the information. I know all the information that's on the slide. After I would do that, I would start doing practice questions. These can be practice questions that you find on your own. I would use ChatGPT to make me practice questions based on the topics that my exam will be on. And I also would use resources that my school provided. So some schools provide you with like different softwares, or like the textbook has softwares attached to it where you're able to make practice questions. So I would utilize those to make or find practice questions to do for whatever is going to be on my exam. This, I would say, is really, really important because it lets you know how and what type of questions will be asked based on the topics. So 100% recommend going over your material and then doing practice questions. If you start doing practice questions before you go over the material, you're going to feel like you don't know anything. So I like to wait till after I've gone over the material a couple of times before starting to look at practice questions. I will use outside resources. So I would use Quizlets. Sometimes I made my own Quizlets to do active recall. Sometimes I will find other people's Quizlets related to the topic that I'm doing, and if it fit really well, I would use those. So you can 100% make your own, or you can find other people's Quizlets related to either the class or the topic that you're being tested on, and see if it's a good fit, because some of them were like exactly the same thing I was learning, so I was able to use it instead of having to make my own. I also would use YouTube. So with YouTube, there are like 3 channels that I 100% would recommend. Nurse Sarah, love her down. She does a really good job with explaining like pathophysiology concepts. So I would really watch her a lot. Next is nursing. I used her for just about every single class I was taking. I used her for patho and pharmacology. I used her for fundamentals. I used her for psych. She does like NCLEX style questions and she go over them, give you the answer and give you the rationale. She'll even go over why the other answer choices are incorrect, and I love that. So if you're not someone, if you don't want to do the practice question yourself, she's doing them and explaining the answers to you. I loved her, especially if I was in the car driving. I can just put on a video and I'm like kind of studying, right, while I'm driving. Or even if I'm in my room cleaning up, doing laundry, you know, you can put it on and she's doing the questions, you're hearing the rationale. So that's another way that you can like study that I thought was really beneficial for me. Another YouTube channel that I watch, but I wasn't like very much watching a lot of the content on this one, was Level Up RN. I did watch like a couple videos here and there and they were really good. It's just her videos are very short. So I guess that's the one thing I didn't like about it. It was a very quick, like big picture things about a specific topic. So I think that's still good, right? Because it gives you like the main things about a specific topic. It's not as in-depth, so you can use that one if you like it. I know some people really like her channel, but I like it, but it wasn't my favorite one to use, or I wouldn't say it's like the best one for me in particular. And the last thing I will say is going to office hours. I did go to office hours for most of my classes because I'm able to ask questions directly to the professor, and they're the ones making the tests and making our exams. So who better to go to and ask if I'm confused? Because sometimes in lecture you might not want to ask your question, or like the class is moving too fast and you're not able to like really understand certain things. So going to office hours, having the professor explain it to you is helpful. My school also did a thing called success coaching for most of our classes, like the big classes like patho, psych, and fundamental. So I would also go to those success coaching meetings because it's another way that you kind of have like a TA who's there to help you explain concepts, do practice questions, do case studies. I did go to those, especially right before exams, to kind of help me prepare for my test. But I will say those are all the things that I really did. And I know it might seem like a lot, but you can do these in any combination. I didn't go to every single office hour. I didn't always use YouTube. Or you don't have to use YouTube a lot. It's like for topics and things that you're very concerned about, you're iffy on. But I will say the things I always did was reviewing my lecture notes the 2 to 3 times for sure, and doing some practice questions. How many practice questions differ? If I had more time, I would do more practice questions, but I will 100% say like going to lecture, reviewing your lecture slides, and doing practice questions are really going to help you prepare for any exams. And that's the main way that I really studied and what worked for me. I hope like this was helpful for you guys. Let me know in the comments if you have any other study tips or ideas that you think will be really helpful for those who are studying. And as always, I thank you guys for watching. I appreciate you guys, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye guys.